I'm not quite sure how I'm going to post it, so um, the video might be out in one link, and then the normal post will go out with the charts so that you can reference. I'm not 100% sure, but obviously the charts will be here in front of you. But if you want to reference them, those might be in a separate post in the normal kind of daily post. So green, markets doing crazy market things. I'll show you in another chart in a second, but I have tried to say over the last few days that yes, the size of the moves have been large, but that's the all important. But it's still only what are we on now? 6 up days, 5 up days, and if you're in any kind of momentum counting system, it's still only 5 up days. It doesn't matter that it's up 5, 6, 7%. That at least in one part of the calculation, it has zero input how big the size has been. The only part of the calculation says was Wednesday an up day? Yes. Was Thursday an up day? Yes. Was Friday an up day? Yes. That's all it is. It counts as 5 up days. I tried to write that over the last couple of days. This is often the part where people just get completely discombobulated by the size of the moves and what's going on. And as I try to write, this is where people are like, this just doesn't make sense. Yeah, I'm not trying to say it does. I'm just trying to give an explanation for possibly why it's happening. It's a combination of everything. All of the momentum signals have triggered. The people who hedged now need to take their hedges off. The people who were underinvested now need to chase. It's a combination of everything, right? So much of it will be said, specific policies or Trump this, Trump that. Personally, for me, that's a load of bollocks. It just is what it is. Like, there was a big question, and the question's now been answered. Right? That's the end of it. And we move on. That's kind of it. That's the market will just do what it has to do to clear everything that that was put in its path. That's kind of it, right? A lot's made about the structural thing that goes into the Santa Claus rally and everything else. And that's its own beast, and we'll have a look at that in a second. I posted this chart the other day, and I've posted it, several times since I started the Substack, and it's trying to show these kind of 2-year cycles that we're now in. The dreaded this time is different. Like, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, look, since 2016, we've been in these 2-year cycles. We have the initial expansion, like the biggest one here being 2020, and then we have the secondary part, so the 2-year part, the second year, which is the compression. We've kind of had that. We've had the long delay through 2020. This was much slower, so all of the 2020 data, it wasn't a sharp up and down like 2020. So this was just spent longer in the look back. So that's why it kept volatility wider, because more and more it wasn't just a down and an up, and it only counted as 60 really bad days. It was 200 odd bad days. So it lingered in the look back. But since that's disappeared, and since now last October has disappeared, we're getting that final compression. Okay. Chart is the same but different. We're just on a much smaller scale. We have the price chart in the middle. We have, I'm always terrible. Anyone that's followed me for a while knows that I'm crap at naming charts and everything. So these are the two calculations you have, up and down. So you have up seas and down seas. Okay. The calculations are, they're basically the same, but they capture the two different types of moves. Okay. It's all based off of one set of data, so that doesn't change. It's just it's how I change the initial data that comes into the two calculations. Okay. So again, what we're getting is as August and everything, as that all disappears, we're now getting this compression over here, and you can see. Now, most people would kind of look here and say, oh, look, we've had this really big move to the upside, and it's going to get weaker from here. This chart could weaken, the line could go down, okay? But just as the line went down here, this was where basically we still have had upwards volatility. If we still think about it like when people are complaining about inflation, okay? Inflation going from 10% to 4%. Oh, that's good because inflation has gone down. Yes, but it's still, prices are still going up by 4%, okay? So in a way, that's what this is saying. Yes, momentum peaked at 20%, okay? But, you know, a few weeks later, it's still going up by 15%, right? So yes, it has slowed, um, but um, but it's still going up. It's just going up more slowly, okay? And that's where you can see here, okay, we had the vol compression, we had all of these bands coming up, and you know, you had this long grinding higher, lower vol, smaller moves, smaller daily moves, but more persistent daily moves, okay? And that's what we kind of moved into here. Vol was compressed, you know, it eventually came to a point where enough lines of trend, both on this measure and on other time frames, and it finally kind of broke down, right? And you did have a small pullback. But that was the same here, right? Yes, this line is going down, it's getting weaker, but okay, it's not going up 20% a month, it's going up 15% a month, and then 13, and then 12, and then, okay. So even though this is going down and it looks negative, it's actually positive because it means that volatility is moving out and we move into these more kind of daily persistent moves, but much smaller. And with that, so there's the flip side. So this is always on, this is just showing the S&P. Well, this shows SPY, right? So when I use the analogy of shaking a can, you know, shaking a can of fizzy pop, you could shake that can, and just as long as it doesn't burst, you put the can down on the table, and the can looks perfectly still. But inside, obviously, all the carbon dioxide is still trying to find its way to get out, right? It's all fizzy inside the can. And that's potentially where this happens. You have the index itself, so the can is just moving very, very slowly. And that's where you can have internal to the can, you can have these things pinging around all over the place, both up and down. So we have to manage that, okay? But you can either have the can moving, you can have the index moving, or you can have the liquid inside of it moving. And that's potentially where, you know, the index itself becomes more pinned, becomes more persistent, but slower. And then that's where you get movement inside of the index. And obviously that's what we do. That's what we spend all our time tracking, you know. Endeavoring to make this a short video. This is the normal momentum line that we always see. Excuse me. This is using daily prices. So this is a combination of the signal strength. It's combining the three different measures. And there was a bit of confusion where I talked about pairs. So when I'm talking about pairs, invariably what I want is, again, another interesting name. Stinky fingers means it's, you know, it's picking bottoms. This is a bottom trigger. It's yeah, that's what that is. Think of it in terms of so this is a combination of two things, which is negative 1 month and 3 month momentum, and the black line of doom. So on the colored charts, the green, yellow, orange, red, and black. So it means it's had a black mark on those rainbow charts. Then, so when I talk about pairs, this is the pair that I want. Okay, this means it's had a huge, by my measure, oversold signal, and I have the metrics for how often that works, what's the percentage positive, etc., etc. Then this one is actually going the other way, so it's this one is a trigger for persistence. So what it means is, more often than not, it means that the short term and medium term, so 1 month and 3 month, are both positive. But then it looks for a kind of what's the right word? Not a correlation, but it looks for a pattern. It looks for a pattern in those two measures. and basically says like, does it meet this pattern? Invariably, it often means, 3 month is positive and the 1 month has gone through a cycle, so it means it's gone from very strong to very weak, somewhere in that positive cycle. So that's what this looks like. The sell signals do the same, but in the opposite direction. And very much to my point of momentum count, these sell signals can be overcome really quickly because this portion has a count in it, but that can be overcome, and overpowered very quickly by daily moves. So just like we've seen over the last few days, the count can be very quickly subsumed by the fact that the price moves like 5% in 2 days. So that's why I say all the time that the sell signals are not as robust as the buy signals, because we obviously rely on the fact, options and their, defined loss and, possible infinite gain that they have, those dynamics feed more into buy signals than they do into sell signals, because that infinite outcome can overcome what might have generated a sell signal. So I have them on there, but I don't short stuff. So it's only really a guide. But like I said, a big move can just completely overcome anything that's signaling on this side. So I choose not to do it. So yeah, as I said, this might be split between two posts, but you'll find all these charts on one or other of the posts. Yeah, if this is interesting, obviously please subscribe. Yeah, we've had a really good run. Here trying to say that yes, all trees grow to the sky and it's just going to continue and we're going to make 10% a week for the rest of time. That's not how this works. We all know that. But if you're open to having adult conversations about the actual realities of what can and cannot happen, that's where I live. I am not a perma bear. I'm not a perma bull. I'm just the weirdo that chooses to live somewhere in between it and is often ignored when everything's going up and everything's going down. So I live in this little niche in the middle somewhere. So yeah. For those guys who do subscribe, thank you. I'd really love if you could give some feedback and some posts. That really helps. It helps the whole our computer overlords in the algorithms that drive some attention to the Substack. So if you guys have the time, I'd love either in the comments or the questions or whatever else. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, have a good day and yeah, speak to you soon.